20 years ago, wait, sorry, 20 years ago, how the... Anyway, 20 years ago, Doctor Who graced the nation's television screens again for the first time since the mid-90s. Well, the late 80s, but that's kind of another story. The debut episode was simply titled Rose, and today I'm going to be taking you on a journey back in time to the year 2005 in the month of March when it first took to our screens. So sit back, pull out your Motorola flip phone and relax. After all, the joy is in the journey. Hi, I'm Nathan, or NJ if you prefer. I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who, have been lifelong, and all things just general media, literature, theatre, film. So if you're interested in that stuff, then please do consider giving me a follow. So let's get into the first retrospective. Narrative overview and production context. The 2005 revival of the beloved British BBC-produced television series Doctor Who brought a fresh perspective on the show with this pilot story, depicting a Doctor with newfound grit, a companion with greater depth, and monsters with modernised designs. The narrative follows Rose Tyler, played by former teen pop star and now well-established and revered in her craft actor Billie Piper, as a plucky 19-year-old retail store assistant who lives a repetitive and routine lifestyle. But when a chance encounter of villainous animated shop window dummies in the underbelly of the shop has Rose cornered and in fear of her life, a benevolent hand presents itself to lead her to safety. Here she meets the Doctor, a centuries-old alien and played by the fantastic... See what I did there? And thespian-natured Christopher Eccleston, bearing the face of an everyday human, but ultimately he sets her up on a path of mystery and intrigue, attempting to solve the answers to how shop window dummies have come to life and hatched a sinister plot. From here, the story marches on with an exciting unravelling of the enigma surrounding the Doctor, whilst Rose's world is reimagined by alien forces and existential threats. Penned by the famous Russell T Davies, the show's lead writer and producer, and one of the architects who worked tirelessly to revive it, this episode was shot by the production team as part of the first block of episodes back in July of 2004, and funnily enough, after the length of absence from writing for the show, he's eventually come back full circle to be the current showrunner once again. Now, looking at the stills from this episode, it really makes you wonder if the cast and crew were actually aware of how big of a debut they would end up blessing everyone with. It was directed by Keith Boak, though interestingly, it was initially offered to Edgar Wright of all people, but he was forced to turn it down because he had scheduling conflicts. And then the episode Rose ultimately debuted on Saturday the 26th of March in 2005, cementing Who history and ushering in a brand new era of the story. Garnering a whopping 10.81 million viewers and nearly 45% of audience share, it's almost certain that a good chunk of Brits were cowering in fear behind the sofa in classic fashion. Pivotal scene. Now I'm going to preface here to say this scene isn't necessarily the most action-packed part of the episode, but it is definitely, in my opinion, the most pivotal in terms of driving the core narrative forward of the show, and also just in terms of the consequential aspects of it and what it really digs down to and implies. So, without further ado. Okay, so here we're going to be looking at the pivotal scene of the episode. The scene I'm calling into question is the exact moment where Rose and the Doctor have their second encounter with one another, and Rose is following the Doctor whilst eschewing pure curiosity. So you may be wondering, what is it about this scene that's so significant? Well, for me, it sets up so much of what makes the core enjoyment of this series: the characters. Firstly, we see the Doctor, quote-unquote, swanning off down a set of stairs in Rose's local housing estate as she hurries to catch up. The energy and riffing in this scene between the two really highlights the bond they are able to build with authenticity, vulnerability, and most importantly, with ease. Beginning with jokes and light-hearted pleasantries as the Doctor and Rose stray further from Rose's home and veer closer to the TARDIS, the tone shifts along with it to one of weighted tension. Despite the extraordinary circumstances, the danger is suddenly very real. As the Doctor details the threat that the Nestine consciousness presents, we start to establish how the Doctor is almost a form of extreme temptation for Rose. Despite the danger he is surrounded by, the appeal of such a mysterious and intriguing person is almost intoxicating to someone stuck in mundanity and routine. And the icing on the cake comes from the Doctor's short but compelling monologue, where he likens his perspective on the world to feeling the very turn of the earth, and ultimately rejecting the normality to embrace the vast, uncertain yet wondrous nature of the wider universe. This goes further to establish the dynamic between the pair, creating clearer boundaries and sets a solidified position of authority for the Doctor. Following this, he calmly and coldly tells Rose, "Now forget me," before walking away, having raised more questions than answered. Overall, this scene does so much with so little, and I've always been fond of the way RTD, and that's Russell T Davies for those unaware, you might want to get used to that one because it's going to be floated a good number of times in this series. The way that RTD manages to convey so much to unpack in a short space of time, but with precision and subtlety through language that's almost too casual for a show of this nature, yet it does just work so well. Star of the episode. It's time to talk about what I'll be calling the star of the episode in each retrospective. This is where I want to hone in on one performance that, whilst the show is full of phenomenal actors throughout, I feel really is the crux of the story, be it through performance, narrative significance, or most probably, in most cases, a happy medium of both. And without further ado, the star of the episode for Rose is Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor. This was a really tough choice for me, given how centred the story is on Rose herself and Billie Piper's immaculate performance as well. But honestly, I've just got to give it to Eccleston just for the pure screen presence he has and the level of attention he commands from the audience, with a nuanced and precise approach to playing the Doctor. You see, previously, the Doctor had mostly been a far more eccentric and jovial type, with a couple of exceptions, but the Ninth Doctor majorly redefines what it means to be and for an actor to play the Doctor, offering a grounded and somewhat more human flair. From the first moment he appears on screen, he lights up each scene with an energy that just makes you so enticed to keep watching. The use of facial expressions that Eccleston imbues into the character, clearly looking for some form of connection with the humans around him, while still keeping people at an arm's length from witnessing his real vulnerability. Physically, he's expressive as well, with grand gestures and movement that really utilises the depth in all the spaces he's in. The costuming goes further to emphasise this departure from the norm and complements the angstier side with his iconic 1940s style leather jacket and more uniform palette. But really, the main thing about his character in this episode is that despite all the changes, you can still walk away from this debut knowing that that's the Doctor. It's still the whimsical time traveller we all recognise and love. In retrospect. Now, let's take a look at this story overall and see how it stands today in retrospect. That is, how much it holds up today in terms of relevance from its key ideas and themes. I feel as though the main concept that really shines through in episode 1 is an escape from the ordinary. We see the character of Rose, who is locked into a routine at the beginning, with the opening sequence visually telling us this through that montage style that presents it all as a flash of day-to-day life, hurtling from one thing to the next. But then the Doctor runs into her life, offering an insight into his chaotic but thrilling world. This comes full circle by the end when Rose accepts his offer to join him travelling through time, as again visually you see time really slow down with her running full pelt towards the TARDIS, and ultimately, in retrospect, this idea holds up nicely, given how this concept hasn't really changed. I'm sure many people out there are still longing for a fresh perspective or a random space and time traveller whisking them off for a new adventure. So, I'd like to just round off here by first of all saying thank you for sticking around to the end if you made it this far, and I hope you enjoyed the first episode of my Doctor Who retrospectives. And if you did enjoy it, then you know how to let me know. Just give a like, comment, share, subscribe, whatever floats your boat really, all would be appreciated. all in all, I'm just doing this as someone who's always had quite a long-term interest in Doctor Who since I was very little. I might detail a bit more in a future episode about quite how long that has been now. But all in all, I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you for episode 2.